This is August 13th, 1981. I am Lenny Bemis, and I'll be interviewing Dr. Jacob O. Mall about his years in Estes Park and medical care. Dr. Mall, we want to thank you for giving your time this morning to come and reminisce about your years in Estes Park and generally about medical care in Estes Park. Would you like to start from the beginning, give us a little background on your family, where you were born, your school years, this type of thing?
I was born in August 7th, 1902, on a farm out of Clay Center, Kansas. When my parents were born in Germany, near Solingen by Durlach in the Black Forest.
How do you spell Solingen?
Solingen, Sollingen.
Okay, thank you.
In the Black Forest area. My father came to Kansas when he was 18 years old and worked for his uncle. And my mother came from another part of Germany approximately at the same time, and they met in the United States. I started to grade school when I was 6 years old, could not speak a word of English.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Do you still speak German? Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah. What you learn? I say what you learn as a child, you always retain, don't
Oh,
you?
yes, yes. And we walked to school 2.5 miles. And I think that was probably the best thing that I ever did for my health.
Of course.
I have strong ankles, never had a fracture, never had a sprain. Then I went to high school, and then I went to Hastings College, where I met Floyd Kuykendall, who was a minister here in Estes Park.
Let's step back just a moment. You said we walked to school. Brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters.
A big family. Are they still living?
I have 2 brothers living and 1 sister who is now 91.
Okay, let's go on to your high school.
Then I went to Clay Center High School.
And you met Floyd Kuykendall?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how is that spelled?
Kuykendall.
Okay. And what influence did this meeting have on your life?
We were roommates in high school. Then he went to Hastings College as a freshman, and I went with him to Hastings College in Hastings, Nebraska, as a senior in the academy. Then 2 years later, he was a divinity student, and 2 years later he went to McCormick Seminary in Chicago. And I went to Northwestern University. But in 1920, Floyd Kuykendall and I came to the YMCA of the Rockies to a convention. And in Estes Park, we thought it was such a wonderful place that we vowed that we would meet somewhere, meet up here, I would have my first practice and he would have his first church.
So at this point, when you came out, you knew that you would be going on to medical school.
Yes.
You had decided upon a medical career.
There's a long history of doctors in the Moll family in Germany.
Also.
And I was impressed, I imagine, by that as a young fellow. So then in 1924, I think it was, we went to China to teach.
And how did you hear about that work, or
Floyd Kuykendall received a scholarship from McCormick Seminary to a Bible school in Los Angeles, and there he met missionaries, and one particular one was from China, and he said if he wanted a job teaching in China that he could arrange it, as he just returned from there. He came from a Kaohsiung high school, and I was working in a golf course in Evanston, Illinois, and he wired me and told me he had a job for me to teach in China.
Fantastic.
Would I want to go? So I did.
Of course.
So I dropped everything,
and so the year again?
This 1920.
1920. Went to China.
Well, no, that would be 1924.
24.
Yes, 4 years later.
All right.
So then I went to Los Angeles, where when he finished his course there, then we went to China, and we went to China by boat on steerage for $100. When we got to China, there was a civil war going on, and the Shanghai was surrounded by barbed wire entanglements, so it was a month later before we got to part of Kaohsiung and Hangzhou, China. The Cantonese were moving north, and they picked up a lot of the students, and so there was quite a disturbance there. But anyway, then I taught in Hangzhou Christian College, and he taught at Kaohsiung, which is about 125 miles from Shanghai.
Up the Yangtze, isn't it?
Yes, river.
Could you?
My brother was planning to study medicine. So when I returned from China, I went via Europe, visited my relatives in Germany, and then came back. And in 1927, my brother and I went to college at University of Nebraska. And he and I graduated in 1931 from University of Nebraska School of Medicine. And then I took my internship at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, in the Army.
Now, how did this happen, that you went into the Army for your internship?
In those days, they were paying doctors $25 a month as an intern, and I thought that was. I married in 1929, and I needed more money than $25. So I took the Army examinations and passed them. That way I got $275 a month.
That's pretty big money.
That was big money.
That was big money, you betcha. You betcha.
Then in the meantime, Floyd Kuykendall became the minister here in Estes Park. Probably would it be 1928, maybe 1927.
Okay. About the time you went to University of Nebraska?
Yes.
About the time you started school
Yes.
there?
That's about
Okay.
it. So when I finished my 1 year of internship, he wanted me to come to Estes Park, and that's what I did. So I came up here July 3rd.
1932, 33?
1932.
1932. Now, were you out of the Army? In the Army
Well,
Reserve,
I was in the
or
reserve.
Just out? You kept your reserve commission.
That's why I had to go back in the service in 1942, World War II.
Yeah, okay. So you came up here in 1932. And was there another doctor here at that time?
Dr. Wiest, Dr. Roy Wiest has been here since 1905.
Full-time or
Full-time.
part-time, Dr.?
Wiest.
W-I-E? Yes. Since 1905, full-time doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Did he have a clinic, a building?
No, he had an office up at the Estes Park drugstore.
Oh.
His office was there.
Above the drugstore?
Lee Ty bought him out and enlarged his drugstore.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. So, Dr. Wiest was here, and then you came, so the town had two doctors, right?
Yes. Dr. Reed was here just during the summer months.
Okay. And, of course...
So Floyd got me a job to work for Dr. Reed during the summer months. And he paid me $150 a month.
So that was a little less than you were making in the Army.
Yes, but I wanted to be up here with Floyd. I figured I'd do better in the long run than being in the Army.
Do you think you have?
Sure.
You betcha. Huh?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Well, that's interesting.
And he got me a cabin right behind his home, which is where Lee Byerly lives now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that was a garage. And he rented that for us for $75 for the season. And my wife, she cried when she walked in there and saw that's where we had to live.
Yeah.
She couldn't believe it. Then my first experience with Dr. Reed was a call that we received. Someone had a heart attack at Lost Lake.
Oh.
I had to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, go down to Glen Haven, and they put me on a horse, and I had my medical bag with me. I had no idea how far Lost Lake was. And I rode and I rode and rode, and finally we met somebody coming down, and I asked them, how far is Lost Lake? Oh, they said, you must be at least 10 miles from there. And finally we got up there, and there was a doctor from Greeley that had a heart attack.
My word.
So we had to make a shift, kind of a
Litter
stretcher,
type,
litter type, and we brought him down to Glen Haven, and I got in at 1 o'clock in the morning.
That was your first backcountry experience, right?
First backcountry experience.
Did you go out like that very often?
But never that far.
That was a good initiator.
Very good. I was never saddle sore in my life.
Oh, I know.
And my arms ached because I had to carry that medical bag
Yeah.
on the horse.
Sure.
Then that fall, when Dr. Reed goes to Palm Springs each year, then I set up an office. The Estes Park Bank had a building right across the street from the church, and it was an office, that I could use as an office, and then one treatment room.
Mm-hmm.
And I practiced in that the first winter.
How many people lived in Estes Park year-round
Less than
at
1,000.
that time?
Less than 1,000.
Mostly within the town limits, were there many houses out? Of course,
No,
now we know
no.
that the
No,
whole
they're
valley
all,
is
they're all in
impacted.
this area.
But they are all within the village limits.
Yes.
Right.
Within this immediate area here. Like the Brentwood Lodge was there, out
Where
in
the
the park.
stables are,
Yeah.
Marine Park.
And then we had 3 livery stables on Main Street. One up there where Wilma Glendinning's place is,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one where the parking lot is here.
All right.
And the other one down there where Brody is approximately.
Yes.
3 livery stables. And
I'd heard a story, or read a story, that in the wintertime they used to turn the horses loose to forage for themselves. Do you remember anything on that?
Yes.
That was the standard procedure?
Certainly, that was standard. There was no, the street, Main Street was oiled, that's all, it was not paved. And between the library here and the restaurant over there were hitching posts along there for horses. And then there was a blacksmith shop down there where Rambo's cleaning establishment was.
Mm-hmm.
And
You mean by the river?
by the river.
Right, next to the river.
Yes.
Yeah. At the Fall River and Big Thompson.
Yes.
Influence. Huh. And so they would just turn the horses loose to forage throughout the winter.
Well, they would turn them loose because they knew which barn they belonged to. After they got through riding, they never rode them back to town. They just turned them loose.
And they came back.
And they just came back. They knew where they belonged.
That's something.
Then I just made a note of something that I thought of. The economic conditions were so bad that our office calls were $2. The home visits were $4.
And you made home visits.
Oh yes. No one ever thought.
I'll bet you there's a whole generation, maybe 2 generations, that knows nothing about house calls because doctors no longer make home visits.
That's right.
And they really know nothing about house
Yes,
calls.
they don't. And here, no one thought about going to the hospital unless it was for surgery or if it was something real serious.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Dr. Wiest was connected with the Longmont Hospital, and he never took care of anything but the ordinary colds or ordinary illnesses.
General family
practice.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And when I came up here, I was trained in surgery, and I was trained in obstetrics and orthopedics, and I wanted to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the first year I was here, for example, we had dirt roads to Fort Collins and dirt roads to Lyons. And Highway 7 was not completed all the way to Central City. That is,
yes,
it wasn't
the
oil.
peak to peak,
real,
right.
real bad. So the first winter I was here, I just got this out of the trail.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, January 23rd, 1933, when Mrs. E.E. Houghton became acutely ill with appendicitis. I decided she could not be moved to a valley hospital, and that would be Fort Collins, to perform the operation for the removal of the appendix at her home, because it took nearly 2 hours in those days over rough roads to get to Fort Collins. Right. I called Dr. Lee, a surgeon in Fort Collins, to assist. I asked Public Service Company to install a strong light to take the place of the kerosene lamps with which the home was ordinarily lighted. Assisted by Polly Monahan, an anesthetist who gave chloroform, and Mrs. George Peck, which is George Peck's mother,
yes,
and Mrs. Howard Cheney assisting me. And
were they nurses or
they were
simply?
nurses.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
They were
And Polly Monahan was a well-known nurse here.
Mm-hmm.
Did so many things for the people in town. And she was an anesthetist, and Mrs. Peck was a surgical nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Cheney just did ordinary nursing around here.
What was her first name?
Mrs. Let's see, Howard. Well, I only know her as Howard Cheney, Mrs. Howard Cheney.
That's enough to identify. And so this was the first surgery, to your knowledge, that was performed
up here
in the valley.
Yes.
Yeah. And that date again was 1933.
January 23rd, 1933. He was the night policeman. We had one night policeman and one day policeman in those days. Then no one ever thought about going to the hospital to have a baby. All were home deliveries. Mm-hmm. And in a way that was safer than going into hospital and then contracting all kinds of infections.
Sure.
In the early days.
Sure, that's right. Before penicillin, before they could handle
before any
infections.
antibiotics. Then the economy was so bad. Mrs. Peck and Mrs. Cheney worked 12 hours, and they got $90 a month. School teachers like Mrs. Vic Walker, who was in Helen Byerly, mm-hmm. She taught in a school east of Denver, and she got $87.50 a month. And then she had to pay her own board bill out of that. I think it's about $1 a day.
Yeah. And so this was during the Depression, and,
yes.
and it was felt
33.
Up here. How did it reflect upon the tourist economy, the tourist business, which is?
In those days, the tourists came out to stay. You know, Elkhorn Lodge was really full. Mm-hmm. Those are seasonal.
They'd come up, and this was their destination, and they would stay.
They would
2 weeks, 2 months, whatever.
Mostly for the summer.
Yeah.
So the economy was really bad then. Then when the banks were closed for a while. Mm-hmm. The Estes Park Bank did not go broke, but they were closed for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And of course, I had to start. I owed money from going to school.
You had your school debts to pay.
I had school debts. I couldn't borrow any money from the bank, and I needed equipment. Mm-hmm. So I'd been here about 2 years, and I got acquainted with Donald McGregor. I also did the veterinary work for him and for around here. So I was a veterinarian too, and if I didn't know what to do in veterinary medicine, I would call this veterinarian that used to come up here to Estes Park. I wonder if I have his name somewhere. But Flint, Dr. Flint. And I would, if I didn't know what to do with the animals, I would call Dr. Flint. And he was a milk inspector up here too for the Mercury Ranch and so on at that time. So because of that, and I needed money, I asked Dr. McGregor if he'd make me a loan of $500.
Donald McGregor.
Donald McGregor. So he loaned me $500. Then a year later, I got acquainted with the Julian Hayden family, and they were the wealthy people too. I couldn't pay McGregor off completely, so I borrowed the money from Hayden and paid McGregor off. And each year I could borrow more money from him by paying one off and then borrowing from the other. In 1936, I opened my hospital up here. It was in the Grace Building across from the church.
Now, let me step back again. The Julian Hayden family, were they summer residents or year-round?
They were year-round.
Year-round, okay.
They owned so many cabins around here. They were in the real estate business.
And you opened your hospital in 1936. So
that was also across from the church. And I operated that hospital until 1942, when I was called into the service.
Were you alone? Did you have a nurse, or did you have any
I
young
had,
assistants?
Mrs. Cheney was on a 12-hour duty, and Mrs. Peck was on a 12-hour duty. Mrs. Cheney was the night nurse. One of Wilma Glendin's boys was born in that hospital.
How many babies have you delivered, or have you?
Hundreds.
Hundreds and hundreds. You haven't kept track.
No, I wish I had.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
To know how many?
Now, just to go over this economy in those days, Maxwell House coffee was 29 cents a pound. Butter was 22 cents a pound. Prime hams, 9 cents a pound. Lamb legs, 17.5 cents per pound. Heating oil, 10 cents per gallon.
What's that, like kerosene or?
Kerosene.
Okay.
No, that wouldn't be kerosene. That would probably have been, that would be kerosene. Haircuts were 40 cents. Shave, 20 cents. Pint of ice cream, 25 cents, all flavors. Coal, $7 per ton. Camp Woods had a chicken dinner for 75 cents. The plate dinner, 50 cents. Special was 75 cents. Trout and chicken dinner was $1. Hotel rooms were $5 to $6 per day, or $20 per week.
Now, did that include food or just the lodging?
Just the lodging. Okay. Then Copeland Lake cabins were $4 and $5 a day, $17.50 a week. A 4-room modern bungalow for the season was $200.
All summer.
All summer.
That's
incredible. Then the other things that appeared in the trail at that time, I just went through that on those years. Mm-hmm. Longmont Chamber of Commerce once the North Seine Drain Road oiled from Lyons to Estes Park.
That's our main road.
Yeah, main road. It was dusty,
yeah.
And one way some of the times in those days.
Did it follow essentially the road that it is today?
No,
I know?
It was on the other side. It was on the south side, and that's why.
That's why you can see traces of it.
Yeah.
You can still see traces of it, can't you?
And in the wintertime, if you had to go down there, it was dangerous.
Because it was in the shade.
In the shade.
Icy.
So later on, they moved it to the north side where the sun hits it most of the time, or I would say east side.
Yeah. It's like the road dropping down from Park Hill. The original road was on the sunny side.
That's
that
right.
goes
When I
behind
drove my
across
home there.
Right. But now it's shady.
And then the Longs Peak Road from Wind River Ranch to Pisa Valley was oiled. They oiled the main streets here on Alcorn Avenue. There were board sidewalks.
Were there?
Yes, over there where the bar is.
The wheel bar?
Wheel bar. There were board sidewalks on that side of the street. Then it says, the town marks parking spaces on Elkhorn Avenue.
That was innovative, wasn't it?
That was really great.
Oh, my.
Estes noted for its unusually pure water and excellent disposal plant. Because they used to kid the people down in Loveland that they were drinking our sewer.
Sure.
Dr. Flint was the milk inspector for the Estes Park Creamery, McCreary's. And McCreary's milk was not pasteurized, and it had 2,000 bacteria per cc. It was better than the Estes Park Creamery, which had 50,000.
Wow.
And where
so that's due to what? their methods in handling
Yes,
the milk.
yes.
Yeah, they're very
I don't know if you
sterile.
heard Mr. McCurry's
yeah.
talk about how pure their milk was,
Yeah,
and that's true. People were afraid of raw milk to some extent. See, then where Herzog is now, there was Jamal's auction, which they outlawed finally.
Why?
Well, because they fleeced the tourists.
Okay, Jamal.
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 Gemal.
Okay.
Jamal's auction on Elkhorn Avenue. And then that's the year that the Moraine Park Road linked up with the New Trail Ridge Road. And there was a notation there, Sam Service, seeding a new lawn at his home on Elkhorn Avenue. I'm telling you, it was rustic.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
But beautiful.
But beautiful.
You've seen some changes.
You've seen a lot of changes.
So I think we skipped something on your marriage. Where did you meet your wife? And
I met my wife in Omaha when I was a medical student there.
Mm-hmm. Was she a student?
I was. This was my last year in medical school, 1929, and she took up nurses training, and then we met and we got married in 1929.
What was the date on that?
February 7th, 1929.
And what was her maiden name?
Marion Louise Lemley.
Lemley?
Lemley.
L-E-M?
L-E-Y.
L-E-Y. And was she from Nebraska?
She was from Omaha.
Omaha.
That's where I went to medical school.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Was born
April 4th, 1934.
And his name?
Is Ronald Wayne.
And he grew up here in Estes Park, went to the Estes Park School?
Yes.
And what profession did he choose?
He's a cardiologist in Fremont, Nebraska, in Fremont, California.
Where did he go to medical school?
He went to Stanford University. He went to Kemper Military School for high school, and then he went to Stanford 4 years. Then he came to Estes. Then he went to University of Colorado School of Medicine 4 years, and he interned at Duke University. And he had a 3-year residency at the University of Colorado.
In Denver.
In Denver.
Mm-hmm. How did he happen to go to California?
Oh, Dave Canfield, who was the superintendent of the park here, Stanford University was named after Mrs. Canfield's parents.
For heaven's sake.
And she wanted him to go to Stanford, so she arranged it.
Well. Now, when did Wayne, is he called Wayne generally?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. When did he go to Fremont, or how did he happen to decide to practice in California?
Well,
because
his classmates
of
were
his
there,
school.
friendship.
Yeah. Okay.
We bought him a home, and when he went to college,
Mm-hmm.
and he had 3 roommates. They're all in business in that area.
Around the Stanford area,
Around
Palo Alto.
Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well.
So they make all their investments together. It was quite a thing, and
And
that
it's a friendship that's...
it helped us to, get him through school, to
Sure.
buy property and then sell it.
Sure, absolutely.
We did the same thing when he went to medical school.
Good.
We bought him a home so he could have renters.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So let's look back a little on medical care. Was there ever any talk of building a full-service hospital? I know you had your hospital. How many beds did you have?
Before the war, I had 4 beds.
Okay.
In 1946, when I got back from the service in the Pacific, I was in the Pacific 3 years without getting home. And Wayne begged me to come home. He said, there are just too many women.
You need another man around, huh?
Another man.
Need another man around.
So the hospital for Mrs. Ramey had a real estate office.
Mm-hmm.
There is a story in here about that. All I have to do, but my wife, she arranged to have the hospital ready for me when I got out of the Army in 1946.
Before we go on, tell us something about your war years, where you were stationed. You're recalled in 1942 because you've been Army Reserve, and you were in the Pacific.
Let's see. At the age of 40, August of 1942, I was called back in the United States Army Medical Corps as a captain. I was forced to give up my practice while I spent 3 years serving in the Pacific during World War II. I served in New Guinea, where I was in charge of a portable hospital. In Australia, where my services were invaluable to the Medical Corps. As a hospital commander in the Netherlands, in Leyte, in the Philippines, and finally in Japan, where I set up a port surgeon's office. I was released from duty in 1946 as a colonel in the reserves.
Now, the newspaper article had said in the Netherlands. That was confusing to me. It infers that you were in Europe.
No, this is in New Guinea.
In New Guinea, okay. All right, because that was a little, Netherlands, New Guinea, that was a little confusing. So you were released in 46 and came back,
yes,
of course, to the mountains. And Marion, your wife, had your new hospital all set up and ready to go.
Up, yes.
Were you surprised?
No, I knew she was going to do it.
Oh, okay.
But in those days, you had to have a priority. You know,
From the war,
yeah.
What was it, War Production Board, something
Yes,
like that?
something
WWII?
like that. In other words, you had to have a priority to get
Materials, building materials. Right. And of course, medical, she would have had fairly good priority, I should
Very
think.
good.
Yeah.
But she had to be there.
Uh-huh.
She'd go to Denver and wait till the cars unloaded
Wow.
and watch for the materials.
Fantastic.
And then Sire Hurd was well known here. His wife still lives here.
Right.
And he was the carpenter, and he helped her select the materials that was needed.
Mm-hmm. And then how many beds in that?
That had 12 beds.
Had 12 beds. And did you have the Mrs. Cheney, Mrs. Peck?
No, by that time we had no nurses from Estes Park. They were not nursing anymore in 1946.
They had retired essentially. And so I've heard from other people that the big growth in Estes Park seemed to come after World War II. Do you agree with that?
That's
that
right.
it was
Yes.
a tremendous
Yes.
influx of permanent people, and
Yes.
that it started to change from
Very much
the
changed
mountain
that.
village.
Yes.
From the mountain village. Wow. One wishes one could go back again at times, but it is as it is.
Yes,
And,
that's right. And that house, it was needed here. And then after, about 10 years later, then the Loveland Community Hospital was built.
So you used the Loveland Hospital.
And I used the Loveland Hospital, and I only used mine as an emergency hospital, because Blue Cross came in and they wanted me to take care of patients at $8 a day and feed them.
Impossible.
It was impossible. But all small hospitals had to close because of Blue Cross.
Because of the Blue Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the rates they would pay, that they
That's
would
right.
allow only
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. And even the Loveland Hospital, the hospitals in Boulder, they had a very difficult time.
Which hospitals were open in Boulder at that time?
Well, two of them.
The same two that.
The same two.
Okay.
And during all this time, there was only one private hospital in Longmont, and that was the Dr. McCarty family.
And
So it was a private hospital. See,
in Longmont.
in Longmont.
When did Longmont build their hospital then?
I can't tell you for sure.
But it was
in
post-war.
about that
Yeah,
time,
okay.
post-war. And then Fort Collins enlarged their hospital.
When did the group locally begin working on a local hospital for the Estes Park Hospital? I know it's become a fact since we've been here in the last 10 years, but I'm wondering, do you have anything on leading up to it? And
Let's see, I had something about that. There was a pre-planning stage. My son, Wayne, was with me here for 3 years, practiced with me.
so he did practice in Estes Park
He
for a while.
practiced for a while in Estes Park. And he and the superintendent of the national park, I put that. Well, anyway, they did the groundwork to plan the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And since Wayne had interned and took his residency at the University of Colorado School of Medicine,
Mm-hmm.
he knew all of the people that were important.
Yeah, in the state medical circles, right.
Yes, so that we could get a hospital in Estes Park. He spent 3 years with the superintendent of the National Park going down and arranging to get everything arranged. So
And the park superintendent was interested
very much.
because he felt for the visitors, the summer
Yes.
visitors and all, that a hospital was
Very
necessary. Do you recall the name of the superintendent, who it was at the time?
I don't have his name right now. It was right after Dave Canfield left.
Uh-huh.
Dave Canfield was also interested in that, and so was his wife.
So this started, when was Wayne practicing with you?
In 1967, 68, and part of 69.
Okay, 67 to 69. And Wayne was instrumental in the pre-planning. Okay, well, we can pick up on that name.
Yeah,
I can look it up later on.
Okay.
But, so then the hospital actually opened, it was about 5 years ago. Get the date on that after, so it took 10, 12 years before it became a reality. And of course, the hospital has had its problems, but hopefully it's...
So then Dr. Beckert carried on from 1971 on.
So, okay, so you retired. Wayne had left in 69, and you retired in 1971. And Dr. Beckert took over your practice.
Took over my practice.
Dr. Bruce Beckert.
Dr. Bruce Beckert.
How did he happen to know that you were going to retire? How did he happen to come to?
Well, Wayne was in California practicing at that time, and he met Dr. Beckert I don't know how. Mm-hmm. And he knew that I had planned to retire, and he was trying to help me find a doctor to take my place. Right.
And had Dr. Beckert ever been in the Estes Park
area?
Yes,
his father has a home out towards Allen's Park.
Uh-huh. So he knew the area.
He knew the area, and spent vacations here, I guess, while he was going through medical school.
Mm-hmm. So, well, is there anything else, particularly about the early years? Any anecdotes or stories, or?
Well, I remember
some of the problems.
Some of the stories were that they thought were humorous at that time. The wife was angry at her husband. When he came in late at night, she said, "You're half drunk." That's because I ran out of money. In those days, there was also a lot of gossip going around, which there is today too. And it said, if a little bird tells you anything, you may rest assured the little bird is a stool pigeon.
He's a stool pigeon.
What is the sign of when your nose itches? Your mother-in-law is coming. And what if your head itches? She arrived.
She arrived. And that's the humor of the day, huh?
Yes. Then I have here Fred Novak and Wayne Mall did the central planning, 1967, 1968, and that was the survey period.
So Novak was the name you were reaching for. Fred Novak was the superintendent. Yeah. Okay.
And the reason that I bought that home out over the lake.
Yes, tell us about your house. It's such a beautiful setting. It's such a beautiful home. What's some of the background on that? In
1937, I came back. I'd taken a postgraduate course in surgery and orthopedics. And Fred Kuykendall, which was Floyd Kuykendall's brother, took over my practice for a year. And when I came back in 1947, Jess Poling was working for the Public Service Company. And he was wiring a home out there on that point. And that used to be known as the High Rocks overlooking the whole valley and the mountains. And this was known as the Spooning Rocks.
Oh, really? The Spooning Rocks.
Yeah. And that's where you'd find Dave Sterling there painting, or you'd find Clem Yor writing his book. And he wrote Rider of the Red Ranges.
Oh, yes.
In 1934. In that year also, his poem, Colorado, was adopted by the state legislature as the official poem of the state of Colorado, 3 stanzas, that he wrote in 1917. And that was
this was York, Clem Yor?
Yeah, Clem Yor. And that's the year that the blue spruce was adopted as a state tree. This was 1933. So I went out, and he said he thought that'd be I should buy that home, because he knew Mary and I used to go out there a lot. I don't know how he knew it, but he did.
He did.
And so I went out and talked with Casey Answer, who was building it. And he said, I never owned a home, or never owned anything that I wouldn't sell at a price.
Now, who was this?
This was Casey Answer, was building homes out in that area.
Casey Ansor.
KC.
Oh, K-C.
E-N-S-O-R.
E-N-S-O-R. Okay, Casey Ensor was the builder.
And he was. Those were in the days that Roosevelt made it possible to get a loan.
FHA.
FHA. So the upshot of it was that I bought the home from Ensa that he was building for his wife. And I got an $8,000 loan from Empire Savings. He carried me on the second mortgage.
Incredible.
And so it just was unbelievable that I could buy a home.
That was one of those unattainable goals that you finally reached. How much land was there?
5 acres.
5 acres and the house, and the total price was what?
The total price was $14,000.
And this was 1947.
1938.
Oh, 1938.
Yeah,
Okay.
1938. That's the year that the Green Mountain Dam was built over the Grand Lake area.
Mm-hmm.
The wages were 62.5 cents an hour above ground. Underground, it was 70 cents an hour. Skilled labor was 70 to 80 cents an hour.
Oh.
Skilled labor above ground, it was $1.10 an hour. And my home was built, and no one got even $1 an hour from Casey Answer.
Incredible.
Incredible.
Yes, it is. Because it's a beautiful, beautiful setting and a lovely, lovely home. So, well, that's very interesting. So, and of course, Marion was very happy.
Finally,
I don't know about Mrs. Ensor. She might not have been too happy.
Well, he built her another home across Small Road.
Oh, all right.
And then they sold out to a lumber yard.
Uh-huh.
And then this is something that I thought was good off of this. On the other hand, Marion Mull, who endured the long hours away from her husband and the many trials and tribulations, joys and moments of pathos involved in being a doctor's wife.
Yeah.
And how true. She chose the title of her book in her memoirs, I Lived by a Dam Site. She started the book and never was able to finish.
And she didn't finish.
No.
Too bad. You have her notes and all?
No.
She just didn't proceed with it. Well, that's a great title. Well, Dr. Mull, we thank you for sharing with us your lifetime. We see you every summer here in the library, and we're delighted that you come back every summer. You live in the winter.
Palm Desert, California.
Palm Desert. Yeah, get away from the cold weather and
Right.
enjoy. Do you play golf or?
Play golf.
That's great. Great.
And I work at the Eisenhower Memorial Hospital.
Oh, well, that's interesting. And what do you do there?
I'm in an emergency.
Oh, super. That's great.
I have to keep up 50 hours, in order to retain my license.
Which, of course, you
I
want
have a
to
license in California and one in Colorado.
Good.
So I keep it up.
Well, I didn't realize that you were still working. That's great.
I still take care of friends, but I don't have a practice.
Yeah. Well, you had a very rich life up here, it sounds like, and I know that the community is very grateful for all the years that you gave for medical care.
Well, that's why I'm still young.
Of course.
My experiences.
Right. Thank you very much,
I
Dr.
praise the
Mull.
Lord.